Since you guys got here early, we're going to do a little interactive. I'm curious what you all are using Microsoft Azure for today. So show of hands, how many people are interested in SSO from on-premises out to Office 365? Okay, almost everyone. How many of you using Azure App Proxy to expose your internal apps to your employees or remote employees? Almost everyone. Okay. How many of you are using or looking to use multi-factor authentication with Azure AD? All right, Intune? Okay. All right, cool. It helps us understand what we need to kind of focus our energy on. There you go, Eric.
Teed it up.
We've still got about 5 minutes, so we'll get started here.
Hello, everybody. My name is Eric Fazendin. I am a product manager at Ping Identity, product manager for PingFederate. We are going to get started here this morning. Mark and I are going to be talking about some work that Ping Identity and Microsoft have been doing together really over the last couple of years. And these are, what we're doing with Microsoft is to provide new integrations, new solutions for customers to help solve problems, both for joint customers and for customers of Microsoft who need to extend their solutions into environments that otherwise they're unable to do so. And Mark and I are going to be presenting. I'll be starting, and then I'll be talking about one particular integration that we're doing together, and then Mark will be talking about a second one here in a bit. But Ping Identity and Microsoft, we very much value our partnership. We are very much invested in the partnership, developing technology together, as I said, to help customers solve problems for which the solutions that we can build together sort of are bigger than what can be built individually. But the key thing really is for customers to be able to extend the value of Azure AD into environments that generally are difficult to integrate into, largely environments that are not AD-centric. But we also provide value in helping customers, existing joint customers that maybe prefer to run something like PingFederate to make it easier for them to integrate with the Azure AD environment. Ultimately, both organizations are focused on the hybrid IT environment, which all large enterprise companies have a hybrid IT environment. And really, when we're talking about hybrid IT, we're really talking about the myriad of different types of infrastructure, different deployment options, different technology stacks, both on-premise and in the cloud. And ultimately, Microsoft does this very well with Microsoft technologies, so they're very good at obviously integrating Microsoft Active Directory to Azure Active Directory. But they also, obviously they have the vision of hybrid IT. They know that organizations are migrating to the cloud, and they've been building out a very rich platform to enable that. Ping Identity does a very good job at remaining technology agnostic. We can very easily integrate applications built with different technologies, different languages, and we can very easily integrate with applications that are distributed in different environments. So obviously, you can integrate with applications that are on-premise, but also very easily integrate with applications that maybe you're deploying in different cloud environments, and by extension, then out to SaaS environments as well. So as I mentioned, we've been working together for the last couple of years, and last year we talked a bit about, or Mark talked about, a solution he's going to bring up here again today, which is really an integration between PingAccess, Ping Identity's access management product, and Azure AD to enable access to applications. I'm going to be talking about the integration with PingFederate to Azure AD, or more specifically Azure AD Connect, which is making it easier for companies to onboard connectivity from their on-premise environment to Azure AD. And then in the future, look for more work we're doing with Microsoft along the lines of our MFA option or strong auth option, Ping ID. So for this first integration, I'll be talking about, as I mentioned, PingFederate to Azure AD Connect. And very specifically, what we've done with Microsoft is added PingFederate as the one third-party federation solution to Azure AD Connect. So prior to this work that we've done with Microsoft, the options for setting up sign-in to Azure AD consisted of things like password hash sync. You can set it up to not configure. You can choose ADFS, but now you can also choose PingFederate all in the same UI. And one of the reasons why both companies wanted to do this was that PingFederate's actually the #1 third-party provided federation solution connecting users up to Azure AD. Once this setup is complete, what this enables is gives users the ability to connect to Office 365 gives you the ability to quickly set this up, to do so in a way that's prescribed by Microsoft, by Ping Identity. But users will be able to access 365. They'll be able to access all the other features of Azure AD, likely to get to the Azure application portal, as well as continue to use your PingFederate infrastructure for connecting to all of your other applications as well. And so everything's centralized on the authentication authority that you've been using, and now you've connected it to the Azure AD environment. If you're not familiar with Azure AD Connect, it's a setup utility that a Windows administrator will download. They'll run on a Windows server. And it walks that administrator through the process of setting up the connectivity between their Active Directory environment and Azure AD. And there's two key things that this does. One is set up directory sync. So when you're connecting to Azure, through Azure AD Connect, you'll set up synchronization of user identities between your Active Directory environment and your Azure AD environment. The other key thing that it does is it sets up the sign-in option, so how users are going to authenticate when they access Azure AD. And so I mentioned some of these previously, but ultimately with this integration, now one of those sign-in options you'll choose is PingFederate. And that's going to look like this. This is actually available today. It's in public preview. So what you're looking at here is a screenshot of Azure AD Connect and the different sign-in options that are available. The oval there kind of cuts it off, but under the oval you can see, or under the oval is ADFS, as well as a do not configure option. But now with PingFederate, companies that are running PingFederate, they can choose that option, and this setup wizard will make it easier and automate a good portion of the configuration for you. Prior to this, if you wanted to configure PingFederate to Azure, you would choose the do not configure option, and then later in the process, you'd need to figure out how to execute certain PowerShell commands and go through kind of a manual process to complete the configuration to set up the trust between Azure AD and your PingFederate environment, largely leading you to doing a little bit of research, finding Ping Identity's documentation on how to do that. But ultimately, it was a little bit more of a manual and error-prone experience. But now it's natively baked in. And the process that you go through when setting this up is that the Windows administrator will run Azure AD Connect. They'll go through the setup wizard. That'll lead to things such as choosing which Azure AD domains that they want to enable for federation. And a handful of particular parameters will be collected that are unique for this particular trust. Those parameters will then be made available to the PingFederate administrator and allow them to complete the connection configuration within PingFederate. And ultimately, your PingFederate environment is going to be unique from one company to the next. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you're configuring authentication. And so the PingFederate administrator will need to integrate sort of these parameters into the authentication configuration that you have already in PingFederate. But ultimately, once that's done, there will be federation metadata that's publicly available, at least from PingFederate's perspective, that it makes available that Azure AD Connect is able to then read to collect the PingFederate specific parameters. And then Azure AD Connect will automatically establish the configuration required at Azure AD on your Azure AD domain to set it up as federated and to set it up with the right certificates and those types of things as a result of what it automatically grabbed from PingFederate. So then the result of that is that is automated and there's a trust established between PingFederate and Azure AD. So ultimately, once you have that configured, users will be able to access Office 365, they'll be able to access Azure AD, they'll be able to access Office 365 via a browser, via native apps, using both the modern authentication method in the native apps as well as a legacy authentication method. And with that, I'm going to transition over to Mark Bostley, again, who is the product manager for PingAccess.
Thanks, Eric. All right, so Eric just showed you a lot of the work that we've been engaged with the last few months with Microsoft. And that's really more about using your on-premises identity and bridging that out to the business processes and other Azure AD resources that Microsoft provides. The story with PingAccess is a little bit of the opposite. We started this a few years ago. We got put together with a really great team on the Azure AD side, the App Proxy team, and as they evolved the functionality inside of App Proxy to expose your applications that may be running in an on-premises data source or AWS or some other cloud provider that's not Azure, the App Proxy functions as that bridge between your remote employees coming through Microsoft and getting access to those on-premises applications without having to punch a bunch of holes open in your firewall. So the role that PingAccess is playing in there is trying to help out with that application integration. So as I said, this was developed by the PingAccess team, my team, as well as the Azure App Proxy team. The idea is that there's a long tail of legacy applications within an organization that are already set up to consume identity based upon some sort of standardized token or proprietary token, or even just based upon headers, the SM user header for all the SiteMinder users out there. And Azure App Proxy does have an on-premises component, this App Proxy connector, but the App Proxy connector is there to set up the connection tunnel between your internal network and the Azure cloud as it is. You can go through the App Proxy that's running up in the Azure cloud, and Microsoft did a lot of work out there and have continued to do a lot of work to add a lot of value from the security proposition, from just data collection and really being able to do a lot of intelligence out there around who gets access to your applications. But when it came to actually getting the identity asserted into the application on premises, there were a number of Microsoft-centric options, but this more generalized approach was desired. So we didn't actually change any code inside of the PingAccess server to do this, but we did generate what we call a free version that's available, and it's a licensed version that allows you to get in, try it out, integrate it with a couple of your applications, and there's a whole set of setup documentation that's available through the Azure portal itself, linking out to some documentation provided by Ping Identity to be able to set this up from end to end, and it's a really good way to kind of get your feet wet, try it out with a few applications before you determine whether it's going to meet your needs or not. When you do need to move to, for whatever reason, you either, move beyond the 20 applications, or where you want to move to a paid version of PingAccess that has slightly more functionality there as well, it's simply replacing the license. There is no other code change required. And this is all actually visible directly through the App Proxy itself as you're setting up applications, or through the Azure portal, sorry. As you're setting up applications, it links directly out to where you can download PingAccess, you can get that free license, and you're off and running. So what are the benefits of this just directly? Well, as Eric was kind of talking, we have this kind of shared vision around hybrid IT where you have identity that may be out in Azure AD, or maybe even bridged out to Azure AD from ADFS or now from PingFederate. And you want to be able to leverage that identity, but you also want to be able to use the Azure App Proxy to expose those applications out to your remote employees, as I said, without punching a bunch of inbound firewall holes. It also allows you to list the applications in the My Apps portal out on Microsoft, which is a really handy way of exposing to your users all of the different applications that they may have available to them. So kind of jumped ahead, the simple license upgrade that's available, and we can talk a little bit more about that. So this is the kind of simplest application integration, the simplest use case that's kind of made available through this. And it does rely on the OpenID Connect standard between Azure AD, the App Proxy, and PingAccess. But we can also extend that by adding PingFederate to the picture. Now this does make it a little more complicated because PingFederate is now consuming the identity coming from Azure AD. But then you can use PingFederate's authentication authority functionality to say, for example, you've got an application that has an on-premises entitlement store. So you have some data that's on premises with the application that you do not necessarily want to move out to those user identities that are stored out in the Azure AD cloud. Well, now you can use the identity from Azure AD, and then you can kind of what I call decorate the application integration with additional information that's available from on-premises data source. And this would involve still, PingFederate to do the data management, and then PingAccess to still do that application integration that we were talking about before. And it's just as seamless. It still relies on OpenID Connect, and it's very extensible. So that's kind of the very high level. This is intended to be a fairly quick presentation, but just to review, the PingAccess, the Azure AD, and legacy apps, that's generally available. We actually released it last year at CIS in Chicago. The SSO from on-premises out to the Office 365 resources and other resources is being worked on right now. It's in public preview, so that's available through the AD Connect application. And then we're also working with Microsoft to embed, for any of you using PingID, the MFA solution offered by Ping Identity. We're using that with Azure AD. So, if you want to use the application authentication that's available through Azure AD, and then you also want to layer on multi-factor authentication through a service like PingID, you can do that. And that's coming soon. That's being worked on by our PingID folks. So we do have, looks like a few minutes for questions. But I also wanted to, before we do that, I wanted to also plug some other stuff. Some of the people that we worked with from Microsoft can do a much better job of describing the value and all of the different features of the Azure App Proxy, if you're not familiar with them. Keith Brinsenhoff is here at the show, so if you get a chance, there he's going to stand up and actually make himself visible. There you go. Thanks, Keith. His team is really great. They know this stuff inside and out, and they can do a much better job of talking about the Microsoft technology than I can. But also Alex Weinert is going to be talking about the investment in security, specific to Azure AD at the keynote today at 1:15. So make sure you get a chance to take a look at that. So with that, I'm going to open it up, see if we have any questions. Yeah, go ahead. Gosh.
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Very excited to see this. Is great work. We're glad to see a lot of this coming together, PingID, et cetera, as well, coming soon. The one piece that we're wondering about, we are longtime PingFederate customers, and we just migrated the servers into Azure IaaS. And we were surprised that we still haven't seen any of the automated scripting and things that you're doing on the AWS side in Azure, so that we can automatically scale on demand and things like that. Is there any work going on the PingFederate side specifically, if you want to host it in Azure in order to provide some of that, taking advantage of that cloud and automatically scaling up and down, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Vikas was asking about is in December, we released some capabilities with PingAccess that allows for automating the deployment of PingAccess in AWS. We definitely see a lot of value in providing automation solutions for our customers to deploy our software in the cloud environments that they want to deploy our software. Obviously, the industry is moving that direction, and it helps our customers reduce the cost of ownership of that software and have more reliability or more confidence in the deployment of the configuration and the infrastructure. So yes, we did focus on AWS with PingAccess initially. That was sort of our initial work to evaluate what we would need to be able to do to accommodate requirements in this area. Azure is definitely a next in line priority.
Yeah. So we do have a team dedicated to doing that. Maybe after this we can sit down and talk about which orchestration engines you're using and what that solution needs to look like for you. One of the benefits and one of the things that made it a little bit easier to do it with AWS is that they provide things like CloudFormation and EC2. Azure's are really great. They deliver a lot of business functionality. But the automation, those kind of infrastructure pieces are still, relying on a lot of third-party services. And at least for our initial kind of steps, we didn't want to require you to then go buy some third party that we were saying, hey, well, you might use, Puppet or something like that, but we use Terraform, so now you're going to have to go learn how to use that too. So it's a little bit more of an area there, but we're looking at doing some Docker work. We're looking at using some of the Azure AD specific functionality to try and leverage that. but we're always looking to learn too. There's a guy named Kevin LeMay. I don't know if he's in the room. No, he's probably not. That's his 100% job right now. Is he's going to be sitting down and figuring that out over the fall of this year, and then we're going to start implementing stuff next year. Yeah, go ahead. You can probably just talk loud, and I'll repeat your question.
On the PingID integration, the AD Connect wizard, if we've got additional email domains that we need to federate as well, should we use that same wizard or should we go to the old method?
Okay, so the question was if you have multiple email domains in Azure or in ADFS. And they've already done one.
So
Yeah, if you want to add more, how do you do that?
yeah, so caveat, I'm not an expert. But my understanding is you can go back into the Azure AD Connect wizard to federate with additional domains. So I think you would go back into the wizard and add additional domains that you want to enable for federation. Cool.
Yep. All right, way back there. Yeah, I
Yep.
can.
I don't know the
Yeah,
answer.
I'm not really sure. So are you talking about trying to, sorry, the question was about Azure AD exposing the endpoint for an application?
I see. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't think that'll change. Really, this is about the initial setup to automate the configuration that sounds like you've already done. But once the trust is established, the ongoing sort of federation activity hasn't changed at all.
Right here.
Yeah, I just want to get a better understanding on the app proxy.
Uh-huh.
You mentioned about remote users.
Yeah.
By using that, it means those users doesn't have to get on VPN to access non-phone sites?
That's absolutely correct. So the question was, with the app proxy with remote users, they don't need to get on a VPN to be able to access on-premises applications or applications that are on a network that's behind a firewall that they normally wouldn't be able to access over like port 443 or something like that. So the way that the app proxy functions, and again, I'm kind of speaking about Microsoft technology, and you know, Keith is the head of the engineering group that wrote it, so he probably will cringe at me if I get something wrong. But the app proxy connector is a piece of software that you install onto a Windows box that runs on the network that's sitting basically next to the application that you're getting access to. And what it does when you register it with Azure AD is it actually makes a connection out to the app proxy running in the Microsoft cloud, and it basically opens up a WebSocket, a tunnel, that then from that point forward, when you expose your application in the app proxy, which is a proxy, so you have an external URL and it knows how to route things internally, it basically uses that tunnel to get onto your network. So the user in their device is connecting to Microsoft and to Azure. Now, the domain, I think by default, the domain is like, you know, onmicrosoft.com. However, you can customize that and use the same domain, you know, for whatever DNS kind of routing that you want to do. You're not going to have to change all your URLs, I guess is my point. So that application would be visible through that URL, but you're connecting to the Microsoft cloud, and then they're being tunneled onto your network. So you don't have to require any either opening ports or hopping on VPNs or any of those types of things. And you get to take advantage of all of the other functionality that app proxy can lend to all of your you know, access control or even just the visibility into it. The role PingAccess is playing in that mode is to basically bridge the identity from the OpenID Connect ID token that's coming from Azure and turning it into a consumable set of headers that the application can read. So the application doesn't have to, you know, speak OpenID Connect natively or, you know, decode a Kerberos token or something like that. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right, cool. All right,
In the
back by the door.
In reference to that, is that only web type traffic, or is that like fat client applications as well?
My understanding is that it's really limited to HTTP traffic, but that would be a really good question for our Microsoft guys to kind of talk to. Now, PingAccess does HTTP traffic. So if there is a fat client requirement, then it would be kind of outside this particular solution that we've been talking about, the partnership, but it may be something that Azure can help you out with.
And that's the component that's installed on the Windows side that you're talking about?
Well, the component that it's installed on the Windows side is just there. It's kind of like a tunneling agent out to the Azure cloud. I'm talking about app proxy itself. It's kind of it's accepting web traffic, right? And so I don't know if you can send other stuff through there. I can't speak to that. Maybe there's other stuff that they have that'll help you out with that too. Yeah. It's 9:55. I don't really remember what time this is. I think we're supposed to be done now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, 1:15 keynote speak, and Eric, Mark, come and talk to us if you have other questions. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
All right.